The starship descended slowly into the capital city of the Calirian Empire. Its hull shone like silver under the twin suns, and as it passed the immense towers of the palace, every eye in the royal court turned toward it. Inside the grand chamber, servants hurried to prepare for the unusual arrival. The Calirian king, a tall figure clad in ceremonial robes of blue and gold, observed with a mixture of curiosity and mild suspicion. His daughter, the young Princess Lyra, stood nearby. She had grown used to the constant scrutiny of the court, yet her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. Lyra was often called the infertile princess. At 23, she had yet to bear a child, and in a society where lineage defined status and respect, her position was precarious. Whispers followed her wherever she went, and advisors muttered behind closed doors about the future of the empire. She had learned to move with grace, to smile even when her heart ached from the sting of gossip, and to hold her head high despite the cold glances of nobles who measured her worth by her ability to produce heirs. The starship's ramp lowered with a soft hum, and a human stepped out. His appearance was unlike any Calirian had seen, tall, with skin the color of bronze and hair the shade of a summer wheat field. His eyes, sharp yet kind, scanned the chamber with calm confidence. This was Captain Daniel Hayes, a human envoy sent to establish relations between Earth and the Calirian Empire. Where most alien diplomats carried themselves with pride and imperiousness, Daniel carried warmth, a quiet understanding that immediately drew attention. When he approached the throne, the king regarded him with a wary expression. "Human," he said, his voice echoing through the high-ceilinged chamber. "Why have you come to my empire?" Daniel bowed politely. "Your Majesty, I come with respect, seeking friendship between our worlds. I bring no threats, only goodwill and cooperation." The king's eyes narrowed. "Words are easy, human. Actions show intent." Before Daniel could reply, one of the court officials stepped forward. "Your Majesty," the advisor said, his voice smooth but edged with nervousness, "the human has also brought a gift for the empire, a token of respect." All eyes turned toward Lyra. She froze. She had not been informed of any gift, certainly not one that involved her. Her heart pounded in her chest as the murmurs of the courtiers grew louder. Daniel approached her carefully, offering a hand. "Princess Lyra," he said softly, "I hope you will accept this gesture as one of friendship and respect. Your people deserve honor, and I thought this might help strengthen the bond between our worlds." The princess blinked. She had expected diplomacy, treaties, perhaps gifts of rare metals or technology, but not this. She had spent years feeling invisible in her own palace, sidelined because of what she could not give the empire. And now this human was presenting her as a symbol of alliance, a gift to the king. The king's face darkened. His lips pressed into a thin line as he stepped closer, towering over both Lyra and Daniel. "What do you mean by this, human? My daughter is not property to be given." "How dare you?" Daniel held up a hand. "Your Majesty, I meant no disrespect. In my culture, giving a gift is a sign of honor, not ownership. I wish to show you that your daughter is valued, and that we recognize her importance to your empire." Lyra felt a strange warmth in her chest at Daniel's words. For the first time in her life, someone spoke to her not as an object, not as a potential heir or failure, but as a person. She managed a small nod, unsure whether she should feel embarrassed, grateful, or incredulous. The king's eyes flared with anger, though. "You presume to teach me about respect? You presume to offer my daughter as a gift?" His voice echoed like a storm. "She is my child. She is Calirian. This empire is mine to guide, and yet you interfere." Daniel did not flinch. "I only wish to honor her, Your Majesty. I see her not for her fertility, not for her role as an heir, but for who she truly is. She is brilliant, wise, and strong. That is a gift in itself." The chamber fell silent. Whispers erupted among the nobles, some scandalized, some intrigued. Lyra felt a strange mixture of fear and excitement. She had always longed to be seen for who she was, yet the risk of angering her father, of facing his wrath, made her stomach twist. Finally, the king's expression hardened. "If this is your way, human, then you will be watched. The court will decide whether your actions are acceptable. And you, princess, will remember your duty to this empire before you consider friendship with strangers." Lyra bowed her head, but inside her heart leapt. For the first time, she felt the possibility of agency, of choosing a path that was her own rather than dictated by whispers of infertility and courtly expectation. Days passed. Daniel remained in the capital, consulting with advisors, engineers, and scholars. Wherever he went, Lyra followed, learning how humans approached problems differently, directly, without the endless ceremonies and veiled threats that marked Calirian life. She began to understand that her perceived weakness, her infertility, did not define her. She could still contribute, influence, and change the empire if she had the courage. During one meeting in the palace gardens, Daniel spoke to her quietly. "Princess, your empire looks to you not for heirs, but for leadership. You have ideas, intelligence, and heart. That is more important than anything else. You are not a failure. You are a gift." Lyra's eyes glistened with unshed tears. She had spent her life hiding, shrinking into shadows, fearing the ridicule of others. And now here was a human telling her she had value. She smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes for the first time in years. Meanwhile, the king's fury simmered beneath the surface. He watched from his chambers as Lyra and Daniel walked together, discussing strategies, improvements, and innovations for the empire. Each day her confidence grew, and with it whispers of her potential influence spread among the courtiers. The king's advisors began to worry. The human had changed something in the princess, something that threatened the old order. Late one evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of crimson and violet, Daniel and Lyra stood on a balcony overlooking the city. "You see it, don't you?" Daniel asked softly. "The empire is larger than one ruler, larger than traditions. It can grow, it can thrive if the right choices are made." Lyra nodded. "I want to help. But my father, he will not forgive what you have done. He will see me as defiant, not capable." Daniel placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Then let us show him. Let us prove that strength is measured in more than just succession, that leadership comes from courage, wisdom, and heart. The rest will follow." For the first time, Lyra felt hope rather than fear. She had spent her life invisible, her voice ignored, her potential dismissed. But now, with the human by her side, she could imagine a future where she was seen, respected, and perhaps even cherished for who she truly was. Word of their alliance spread through the capital. Nobles whispered about the human's influence on the princess, some in awe, some in fear. The king's anger grew daily, though he could not yet act openly. A storm was coming, one that would test the bonds of loyalty, power, and love within the palace walls. And then, the rumors began. Whispers of a possible heir, born not from tradition but from a new understanding, began to circulate. The king's fury reached its peak when he overheard advisors debating what it would mean for the empire if the princess, once deemed infertile, was now seen as capable of producing an heir under the guidance of the human. His face turned red with anger, his hands clenched into fists, and his voice shook with fury. "Impossible," he muttered, pacing in his chamber. "My daughter, she cannot..." And yet the whispers grow. "This human, this stranger, dares to alter the course of my empire." Lyra, unaware of the full extent of her father's rage, continued to learn, to grow, to assert her place in a court that had long dismissed her. Each day she gained confidence. Each lesson from Daniel sharpened her mind, and each conversation strengthened her resolve. She was no longer just the infertile princess. She was a force to be reckoned with, and the king would soon realize that. The sun set completely, leaving the city bathed in the soft glow of the palace lights. In her chambers, Lyra sat by the window thinking about what lay ahead. She did not know what the future held, only that it was hers to shape. She had a human friend, an ally, and perhaps more than that, a kindred spirit who saw her for who she truly was. As she closed her eyes that night, she felt a spark of determination. No longer would she be invisible. No longer would she be defined by whispers and fears. The empire was watching, and so was her father. And when the storm came, she would be ready. The palace was alive with whispers. Every corridor, every chamber, carried rumors of the princess and the human who had changed everything. Princess Lyra walked with a quiet confidence now, her head held high, her mind sharper than ever. Where once she had moved cautiously, afraid of every glance, she now spoke openly, shared ideas, and challenged advisors, not out of defiance, but because she knew her voice mattered. The human, Captain Daniel Hayes, had become a constant presence in her life. Together, they discussed strategies for improving the empire, trade reforms, technological upgrades, and educational programs to elevate the lives of common citizens. He taught her to think critically, to question traditions that no longer served the people, and to see leadership as a blend of intelligence and compassion rather than power alone. But in the king's chambers, storm clouds gathered. His fury had grown from whispers to a roaring fire that he could no longer contain. His advisors approached him cautiously, aware that any wrong word could trigger his wrath. "Your Majesty," one advisor began, "the princess, she is changing the court. With the humans' guidance, she is asserting ideas and reforms that, well, they concern some of the nobles." The king's eyes narrowed, his voice like thunder. "Concern? This is not concern, it is betrayal. My daughter, influenced by a stranger from another world, dares to challenge the traditions of our empire." Another advisor tried to soften the words. "She is still your daughter, sire. Perhaps we can guide her, help her understand the proper path." The king slammed his fist on the table. "Guide her? She is being molded by that human, turned into a symbol of change that I did not sanction. And now I hear whispers about heirs. Heirs from a union with a human influence. Impossible. Ridiculous." Meanwhile, Lyra continued her work, unaware of the full depth of her father's anger. One morning, she and Daniel were walking through the palace garden, reviewing plans for a new communication system to connect the Empire's far-flung colonies. "Do you ever think about the future, Lyra?" Daniel asked quietly. "Not just the Empire, but your own life?" Lyra paused, looking out at the golden towers in the distance. "I used to think the future was a cage. I was expected to marry, bear an heir, and never question my place. But now, I feel like it's something I can shape, something I can fight for." Daniel smiled. "You're stronger than you realize. And the Empire? It's lucky to have you awake, thinking and leading." Her smile was hesitant but genuine. She had spent years being told she was unfit, infertile, useless in the eyes of tradition. And now someone believed in her abilities beyond reproduction. It was a feeling both exhilarating and terrifying. The king's anger could no longer be contained. He summoned Lyra to the council hall, a chamber filled with advisors, nobles, and ceremonial guards. The air was thick with tension, and the hum of whispered speculation reached Lyra even before she stepped inside. "My daughter," the king said, his voice cold, "you have grown bold in my absence. You have been seen with the human, conspiring, plotting, teaching. Do you not understand what you risk?" Lyra stood tall, meeting his gaze. "Father, I risk nothing. I am learning. I am helping, and I am preparing to serve the Empire to the best of my ability. I am not defying you. I am honoring the people who live under your rule." The king's jaw tightened. "And what of these rumors? That you who were once infertile now may produce an heir influenced by a human. Do you not see the scandal, the dishonor?" Lyra's hands rested at her sides, calm yet firm. "Rumors are only words. I do not control what others say, but I can control what I do. I am still your daughter, but I will also be a leader in my own right. And if there is an heir, it will be for the good of the Empire, not to satisfy old fears." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Advisors whispered anxiously. Some were inspired by her courage. Others feared the storm that was brewing. The king's face was a mask of fury and disbelief. He had never seen his daughter speak with such conviction, and it both terrified and infuriated him. That night, the king met with his closest advisors in private. "This human," he said, pacing, "he dares to teach my daughter, to influence her thoughts, to bend the Empire to new ways. We must act. Either we remove him or we remove Lyra from the line of influence before she ruins everything." An advisor, careful and measured, suggested, "Perhaps patience, sire. Let us observe. If she truly is capable of leadership and earns the loyalty of the court, perhaps the Empire will survive under her guidance. If not, then we intervene." The king's eyes burned. "Patience is a luxury we cannot afford. I will not watch my empire crumble because of a human's arrogance. I must act, and soon." Meanwhile, Lyra and Daniel continued their work, unaware of the full scope of the king's plotting. Daniel had begun teaching her not only strategy and diplomacy, but also the nuances of trust, patience, and negotiation. "You see, Lyra," Daniel said one afternoon, "empires are like living organisms. You cannot force them to grow. You guide them. You nurture the parts that are strong and adapt the parts that are weak. Your people will follow you if they see wisdom and courage, not just tradition. Lyra nodded, absorbing every word. I understand, and I will do my best. The Empire deserves a future, not stagnation. I will not fail. The weeks passed and Lyra's reputation grew. Courtiers who once dismissed her now sought her counsel. Scholars debated her plans with enthusiasm, and even the common people noticed her influence. Each success strengthened her confidence, and each step forward made the king's fury more palpable. One day, a messenger arrived at the palace gates with urgent news. A neighboring system was facing a crisis, a sudden outbreak that threatened thousands. The council expected an immediate response. Lyra saw the opportunity. We can help them, she said firmly. We have the technology, the ships, and the knowledge. If we act quickly, we save lives and strengthen the Empire's reputation. Delay will only bring disaster. The council hesitated, glancing at the king for guidance. He clenched his hands, torn between fury and pragmatism. Finally, he spoke, his voice begrudging. Do as you wish, Lyra, but remember, every decision has consequences. Lyra mobilized the fleet with Daniel's guidance. Their efficiency was unmatched, and within days, aid reached the neighboring system, saving countless lives. The people hailed her as a hero. Even some of the king's most loyal advisors could not deny her ability, and whispers of admiration began to replace words of doubt. The king, watching from his private chambers, felt a mix of pride and rage. He could not deny his daughter's skill, yet he could not forgive the human who had guided her. He summoned Daniel to a private audience. Human, he said, his voice tight, you have altered my daughter. You have changed the course of my empire without my permission. Explain yourself. Daniel met the king's gaze steadily. Your Majesty, I have done nothing but help Lyra realize her potential. She was always capable. I merely encouraged her to believe it. The empire benefits when its people are empowered, and Lyra has the wisdom to lead. The king's fists clenched, but he remained silent, realizing that anger alone could not undo the changes already set in motion. He left Daniel with a warning. One misstep, and both human and princess would face consequences. Back in her chambers, Lyra reflected on the day's events. She had faced her father, mobilized aid, and earned respect, but she knew the storm was not over. The whispers of heirs in succession would not fade. Political rivals would continue to plot, and the king's fury would not easily be quelled. Yet for the first time, Lyra felt ready. With Daniel by her side, she had the guidance, support, and courage to face whatever came next. She had begun to carve her place in the empire, not as a symbol of fertility or obligation, but as a leader who could inspire, protect, and guide. The sun set behind the towers once more, casting long shadows across the palace. Lyra looked out at the horizon, thinking of the future she would shape, the alliances she would forge, and the legacy she hoped to leave. And somewhere deep in the palace, the king's anger simmered, promising that the days ahead would test both father and daughter, human and alien in ways none could yet imagine. Lyra smiled faintly. Let the storm come. She was ready to face it.